2022. Ms. Coveri, can you please let members present?
Manufo Leah Inga Anawai.
Here.
Marie Brizuela is absent. Andrea Jordan.
Here.
Shaquille Ali is not present. Clayton Koo.
Here. Thank you. Next is the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Valenti, could you lead us in tonight's pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next is the approval of the agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
First and a second, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous. Next is item 5, special presentations. Of 5A, Bay Ed Fund. Representatives from Bay Ed Fund will present on the organization's mission, hopes of partnering with JESD, and ways it can support the district achieving its desired outcomes. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much for making time to include us in your meeting. So my name is Ash Solar. I'm a partner with the Bay Ed Fund and really excited to be in this space with you and your community. Our hope today is just to briefly personally introduce a couple of our team members, give you a high-level introduction about the work we're hoping to do with communities in the Bay Area, and start to discuss the possibility of a partnership down the road with the Jefferson Elementary community. In terms of who the Bay Ed Fund is, we're a relatively new organization. We formally launched this past January. We are a team of 4. Myself, Ash Solar, my colleague Crystal Adizon is here as well. A couple of just themes about our team. Everybody on our team is first or second generation immigrant. Everybody on our team is first or second generation college graduate in our family, and all of us have spent the bulk of our career in public education. And we're really excited to find ways to empower students and families to work with districts to improve the experiences and outcomes of students and their communities. In terms of why we launched, as we were kind of navigating all the consequences and implications of the pandemic, we saw 2 really urgent and important opportunities, and saw the need for districts and communities to come together in this moment and really take the opportunity to step back and think about what would it take for us to work together to realize an inclusive, equity-centered school system transformation effort. And so at the center of that, we believe that for meaningful change to happen in schools and school systems, the work of building a vision has to be a deeply inclusive and collaborative one that involves students, involves families, involves educators and district leadership. And second, we think that the pandemic, for better and for worse, made parents significantly more aware of what was happening in their education of their students and significantly more invested in potentially leaning in and supporting that work moving forward. At the highest level, our vision in the Bay Area is that too many of our youth who are growing up here, educated here, are having a harder and harder time imagining themselves thriving as adults here, and that is fundamentally wrong. And we have an opportunity to come together as communities to reimagine what would have to be true for them to be able to thrive as adults in the Bay Area. In terms of our work, we are very deliberately and by design a community investment fund. We don't invest only in districts, we invest deeply in communities. And we hope to work with communities that are interested in building local movements and working together to transform the capacity of districts. And the way we think that happens is by deeply investing in creating the time, space, and place to bring together families, communities, teachers, district leaders, and philanthropy to again co-design that vision and then to do the hard work of implementing the solutions they come up with to realize the change they want. These are some of the pillars of our work. I won't read them to you, but I will highlight a couple of big themes. Again, for us as a community investment fund, we believe deeply in broad, inclusive leadership. We believe deeply in the need to take the time on the front end to build shared understanding of what we want to be true for our kids, what we believe to be the biggest challenges in our schools today, and to co-create a vision to work towards over the long haul. We try to imagine being a fund that is not in the business of telling communities or districts what to do. We're very deliberately see ourselves as a how fund, not a what fund. We have no interest in saying this is what we will fund and these are the hoops you must jump through to be funded. We have a lot of interest in saying we think that if communities come together, they can name their problems and they can come up with their solutions. And our job is to support that how. And so we believe that organizer principles should drive our work, not investment principles. And so local capacity building means never doing for others what they can do for themselves, moving at the speed of trust, and really always thinking about how can we support students, families, educators to be leaders and owners of the work. And then lastly, and perhaps, well, definitely worth highlighting is one of the other things that we think has to change about the role philanthropy plays as a partner is getting out of the unhealthy routine of we will fund you for 1 year, we will measure you, and to waste a lot of your time with grant reports and hoops, and then maybe we will, maybe we won't fund your work after that. And for us, our hope is that if we find a community that is excited to partner with us, and that will be your community's decision more than ours, that we would then commit to the long haul. And we imagine that being 10-ish years so that we can be honest about the amount of time it takes to do the work that will be required to build the system we want for our students, families, and educators. Just really quickly in terms of how we think about key stakeholders, absolutely empowered families and students are front and center, not engaged, empowered. And so that means we don't ask them to come out for one event. It means we build their agency, we build their leadership to be powerful leaders in spaces with educators and community members. We think too much is asked of districts in terms of all the roles and hats they have to wear in supporting kids and educators as well. And so community coalitions are critical, not just nonprofit partners, but other government agencies and all the resources they can bring to bear. When we look to find partners in terms of district leadership at the board and central office and school level, we're looking for leadership that has the humility to say, I want to figure out how to better engage community, and particularly our most marginalized students and families. How do we hear from them? How do we engage them? And how do we take direction from them? And then lastly, philanthropy has to play a role, but it has to be a supporting role, not a dictating role. And so it's a lot of humble pie on the philanthropy side and a lot of being in service of the vision and desires of the community. Just really quickly, how we imagine the arc of 10 years unfolding. We begin with a really low stakes exploring phase. And this phase, it's really just about building relationship, getting to know as many people as possible, doing as much deep listening as possible, and being really transparent about who we are and the work we hope to support so that your, not just district leadership, but your community can know who we are and can have an informed opinion about, does the work we're trying to support seem values aligned with what you want to do as a community? And if so, then we can talk about moving into a more formal kind of relationship, which would be kind of the phase 2, which is the work of preparing for the co-design process. And that means how do you deeply engage your community? How do you deeply engage your educators? And how do you create the space and place for the ongoing dialogue that needs to happen around what do we want to be true for our kids and what is true in our current reality and what is the path from today to the tomorrow we want to realize together. And so just in terms of timing, the exploring phase can go as fast or as slow as the community wants. By design, we don't have application deadlines. By design, we're not asking districts or communities to compete against each other. And by design, we're moving at the speed of trust with the communities we meet with. And so we would imagine 1 to 2 years of working together to get through a co-design process, and then kind of 2 chunks at 4 years to support initial implementation, then take stock of where we are with community and recommit to a second phase of implementation, continuous improvement and sustaining of implementation. So this is, I won't read this to you, but this is just kind of, again, keeping the exploring phase as low stakes of just how do we have conversations, how do we get to know one another, and how do we see if there's a possible fit to work together. I think the last thing I'll highlight is we know that superintendent has just announced his plans for transition. We've really enjoyed working with him and are excited to continue working with him. We know you have a board election coming up as well. And so again, we're happy to go at the pace that is appropriate with the community and district, and excited to keep meeting as many people as we can in the near term. And then when it's appropriate, discuss if it makes sense to explore the next step of, or next phase of partnership. And with that, I'll open for discussion if we have time for it.
Cool. Thank you very much, Mr. Solar. Any questions or comments from board members?
Yes, thank you. I did have some questions, but as you were doing your presentation, a lot of them were answered. This sounds like a good opportunity. And I just had a question about the process and who comes to help us, you know, through those different phases. Is it a facilitator? Is it one of the partners? That was my only question.
Yeah, it's a great question. And for us, our partnership with every community will be unique to that community. And so I think as we are moving forward, if that was identified as a need, then our job is to offer the resources to make sure we have the capacity, whether it's in the system or in the community, or finding an external facilitator. And so we would plan to take the direction from you and the community in terms of what would be most helpful to move forward. Yeah.
I just wanted to say thank you for that presentation. I know we had already engaged previously, so I was aware of what we were going to be discussing. However, I did want to point out that on the presentation, when it talks about the timeline, it's, I think the last time was like 4 years, right? But I think in order for this to work, what I wanted to mention was it's a long-term thing. It's going to be well beyond 4 years to really see the impact of what you all do. And again, similar to my fellow trustee, I think this would be great. It would be a benefit to our community and our district. And so I'm really excited to see it on the agenda.
Thank you.
I agree with what's been said. I appreciate the opportunity that we had to engage in conversation with yourself and Crystal. I found that to be very informative. And as already mentioned, I believe we'd welcome this opportunity. We serve the very communities that you are speaking to. And as we know, you've already mentioned that the districts can't carry this work alone. And it is partners such as yourselves that we seek out, and we appreciate being sought out as well. So I think it's wonderful that you organized more recently, as you said, and formed Bay Ed Fund, and have come into our community. So I look forward to a future opportunity.
Well, thank you.
Echoing my colleagues, feel the same exact way. Thank you again for the presentation. It's great to see you again as well too. I just had a question just in terms of phase one. I know that we've spoken earlier this year in regards to sort of just exploring and talking to different individuals in the community. I guess what are the next steps for our district, or sort of what do you need from the board, or how we can best help you out?
Yeah, well, we're really lucky to have started the conversations with community, and I'm looking at all the people in the room and excited to find ways to engage them if they're interested too, just to hear about their experiences. I think, like I said, we are excited to move kind of at the speed that makes sense. Not, again, community investment fund, so with board, but also with community. But I think for us, we wanted to take your direction on with the school board elections coming up, with the superintendent's transition. Is this something we move forward with before those transitions happen? Is it part of those transitions? And we can be creative. Again, a big part of our work is supporting deep listening. And so if it's helpful during the transition or to help, like, what is the community thinking about, where are their priorities, where are their issues? That's like a tactical thing we can do, but we will listen and wait for direction from you all on pace.
Sure, Mr. Dallas.
Yeah, so it was just a little bit under a year ago, I think, that we met and we, started to have this conversation. I mean, the first conversation was more just interviewing different superintendents, what are needs of districts. And then we started to pursue more the possibility of Jefferson School District being a partner with the Bay Ed Fund. And I remember pretty soon after we started having the conversation, I was like, well, I know for sure I will not be around in 10 years. And I don't know how close to 1 year I'll be around, but I'm not, but it's been an open conversation with them. My transition, my thoughts of retiring, it was not been a secret. It's not a shock to them. I said, if you can engage with us knowing these things are up in the air, we'd be happy to continue. Honestly, you can't really engage with the school district and hope for a continuous 10-year involvement of a superintendent. The average tenure is 3 to 5 years, sometimes 7, up to 7. So we have exceeded that with my leadership here. So I think it behooves us to, continue the exploration period. And I think at that point, the analogy of dating and marriage came up. It's like, for a while, you see the person across the room, you're like, that looks interesting. You go over, you start chatting, you go out on a couple of dates, you start getting into a more in-depth relationship, and you decide you want to have a long-term relationship with that person. And that takes a while. So I think we're in that stage of beyond, you look like a cool person, I want to get to know you. We're in that stage of, let's go have coffee. So
Again.
so yeah, Mr. Solar and Ms. Arizona, we're excited about this and excited about, so many needs that exist in our community. And our district has lots of little fingers and lots of different pots. And we engage with community partners in a lot of those spaces. So it'd be nice to have sort of a directed, focused approach to how we interact with our community. And they have a list of different organizations that they work with in the past. And I'm like, okay, we work with them, we work with them, we work with them. So a lot of our partners are the same partners. So it feels like the right direction to move in.
Thank you. Any other comments? None said. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much for the time.
Look forward to talking to you guys in the future.
Same. Thank you.
Next item is item 6A, board member acknowledgement and commendations. I will start on my right. Ms. Lean got away.
I don't have a lot to say except that every morning on my way to work, I appreciate seeing, surprisingly appreciate the congestion on Eastmore. Because it allows me to stop and see the development of the Workforce House project. But what I have loved is seeing our crossing guard there on the corner with such a bright smile and seeing families cross the street. Just seem to be embracing that level of community. And it's been a long time coming to be able to see and feel some of that. And I've been able to pass by when I'm walking through on days when I get to work remotely. And it's definitely a feeling that I've wanted to feel for some time. So to see that energy just in our neighborhoods and more specifically at our schools leaves me with a lot of appreciation for all that goes on in every school site that we are committed to ensure continues to do their job in providing a quality education, a quality public education for all of our children. So I just want to say thank you to everyone for that. I appreciate that experience.
I had the pleasure to attend some of the back to school nights, and I feel the same sentiment. It was just so great to be in classrooms with the teachers, with the students, with the parents, the entire community. Just being able to see that again, you could see the children are excited to show off, their projects. They're like, look at this wall and look at what we wrote, and it's just so cool to be back to somewhat normal, where our children are being able to be engaged in ways that they weren't before. And so really happy to see that. Last week was a scorcher. And I know our students, being in the classrooms, and I think having the ventilation that we did during COVID probably helped with some of that. So we're seeing the fruits of our labor there. And I'm obviously seeing some of the funds that we received being used on our sites with fencing and and roads and all those things. And so and similar to my fellow trustee talking about the development on the workforce housing, it's just again seeing the progress is really a motivator and inspiring, because I think even though Superintendent Vidales is not going to be here much longer, he's still getting to see kind of the fruits of the labor that he put in. So excited for the rest of the school year.
I just wanted to echo some of Ms. Jordan's comments about going back to school. Attended some of the back to school nights at some of the middle schools and elementary schools the past couple of weeks. It's nice just to see everybody back in school and sort of the start of the new year, I think, or start of the new school year. I think there's just a different energy just being there in person and seeing everybody excited, just walk around and explore the campus. So just want to wish everybody a great start of the school year as well too. And I realize next week's already the first day of fall, so I'm just wishing everybody a happy fall as we start that off as well too. Next is superintendent comments, 6B.
Thank you. So, as been mentioned, I did make my announcement that I'll be retiring at the end of this school year. I just gave my formal letter of resignation to Mr. Koo, so that he can sign off on it, whether he wants to or not. And the board will get an opportunity to accept that at our next board meeting. Like I said, it's been 12 years as superintendent. Certainly they've flown by. I can't imagine 12 years feeling like this. And it has been a good 12 years. We've done a lot. And so I appreciate having the time to reflect and consider and help the board plan for the transition over the period of the next 9 months. So I'm fully committed to that. I don't want to see half of my career's labor go to waste, and would like to see the district continue to aspire and achieve new heights. Couple of cool things that have happened in the last couple of weeks. I mean, many of you mentioned back to school nights. Speaking with principals about, thoughts about back to school nights, I think they all captured some of the same things that you shared, community, being back in the schools, happy to be around each other, happy to be with their friends and their friends' kids, and they're in the space that their kids spend most of their day. All of those, a lot of very positive and warm feelings about that. And as a district, we realize that the COVID is still with us and around us, but the level of dread and fear around it has diminished considerably. And we are learning to continue to be safe and continue to monitor our symptoms and continue to isolate when we identify that we have COVID. And, our rates in our community are still pretty high if you look at it historically, but they are dropping. And certainly in our school district, the cases that, as they're being reported to us, have stabilized on a downward slope. So we're happy with that, and still continue to be happy that it has not affected many in our community on a very serious level. good news, we had 2 schools this last week who received recognition from California Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports Coalition. MP Brown Elementary received the Platinum Medal, which is the highest award level for their efforts in creating a positive community at their school sites. And Susan B. Anthony received Silver Medal for their efforts. We only had 2 schools apply this year, and both of our schools received the medal. A couple of years ago, we had all our schools apply, and all our schools received a recognition. So we're looking forward to more schools submitting their applications this spring so we can have more recognition. We're doing a lot in this space, and it really shows off when you look at it across the state. So I mentioned COVID and, the heat last week, and, we're planning for smoke. There's never a dull day. So I think the air filtration systems that we have in our classrooms now are going to help with that, the portable as well as the ones that are built in. These are things that we know help. Going to make us uncomfortable for sure. But we also know the value of being in school and the harm that being out of school does. And so I think with that renewed passion that everyone has, that it's really important we get kids in school as much as possible for their socialization, for their academic progress, and that we now have the safety measures that make it a safer space. And almost nobody in our community has air conditioning units in their homes because we don't need it here. So I believe our air quality in our classrooms will be much better than air quality in our homes, certainly in my home. So I think that will be a plus for us. Hoping it doesn't get too bad, but we are preparing and having discussions around that, how to support our students who might have some lung issues, sensitive lung issues, and they need to be taken care of in a different way than a healthy student. So that's it. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you. Next is 7A, consent agenda. The administration recommends approval of the starred items on the rest of tonight's agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
There's a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous. Next item is item 7E, Educational Housing Corporation 501c3 nonprofit board director composition and bylaws. The administration seeks direction from the board on the composition of the board of directors for the JESD educational housing nonprofit based on the draft bylaws. The board will review recommended bylaws for the JESD housing nonprofit. The administration recommends approval of the JESD housing corporation bylaws. Mr. Fidelis.
Yeah, so that the recommendation is going to shift a little bit. Today we recommend approval of the composition of the board. We still need to make some changes to the bylaws, and we'll bring them back when they're finalized. But as requested at the last meeting, we looked into various different education housing corporations in the Bay Area and looked at their composition of their education housing boards. And as you see, it's anything you want. There's no one way to do this. And so that caused us, Mr. Laro, Ms. McCulloch, and I to think about how is it that we do business in our school district, and how might the Education Housing Corporation Board reflect that manner of doing business. And so our recommendation for the Education Housing Board is that it contain one representative from the certificated unit, our teachers, and one representative from our classified unit, our classified employees, one representative from the superintendent's office, which would be, at this point, would be Mr. Lauro, and one representative from the board, and the role of the superintendent's office and the board is to provide that big picture oversight of the district, and how does this housing corporation fit into the vision and direction of the district, and maintains a close tie to the district. And then up to 3 or 4 members from the community that have professional and personal experience in residential housing management, if we can find them. But we're going to start looking as soon as you decide the composition. So that's our recommendation for the board. Ms. McCulloch is here with us today. If you have any questions, I'm going to invite her forward because she's the one who's best equipped to answer them. She has been sort of leading and directing this work for us, and doing a lot of the investigation and compilation. So I would ask that you direct your questions to her.
Good evening. Welcome back.
Oh, now it's on. This is, ooh. Good evening. I'm happy to be back, and nice to see you all, and nice to meet you, Trustee Jordan. So we did a lot of investigating and asking our partner districts, the high school district, the community college district, and I looked and investigated Santa Clara Unified School District that has done this for a long time, and checked their board bylaws and their composition. And as Mr. Vidal said, it's all kind of really what you would prefer. And I asked really, what is your rationale? So I spoke to the leads and the partner districts, and they said it's really important to have a board member on this board of directors because you want them part of the vision and to be representing the school board interest, since the school district does own the property. So that was both organizations, the high school district and the community college district, said it was important to have board members. And both of those actually have 2 board members, trustees on the board of directors, but we felt having a cabinet member as well as a board member would be sufficient to represent the district's interests. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer what I can.
Any questions? I guess I have a question. In terms of the board directors, in terms of creating a bylaw and such, in terms of authority and such, how does the board directors for the Educational Housing Corp differ in terms of how sort of decisions they make or sort of directions they can offer compared to what the board would do at the end of the day?
Well, their bylaws would be related to the oversight of the property and not the education of the district. And so the bylaws, are recommended by county council, and we're actually following what the community college district, in collaboration with county council, which then the high school district took theirs and tweaked it to fit them, and we're taking it now to tweak and fit ours, making it better. We're asking them, what are some things you would have done differently? And so really the bylaws and the direction of the board of directors is to focus on the oversight of the housing. And so that's where it would differ. Is that what you're asking? Mm-hmm.
Any comments?
I guess the only question that I would have, if, I understand the need to have a board member on there, but if the board member was on there and they made any decisions as their cabinet or their board, and then it would come back to this full board, would there be any issues with them voting on that? Or would it be okay? Is there going to be bias because they're on that board and then coming back to the full board?
Yeah, I don't believe that there should be, unless for some reason the Education Housing Board just determined that every sitting Education Housing Corporation board is going to get a salary. And then you came back and you're voting for a benefit that you're getting, then it might be difficult. But I don't, the types of issues that go back and forth is primarily fiscal.
Okay.
So, Education Housing Board needs so much money to replace the roofs, and then the board approves that. So that kind of, those are the kind of issues that might go back and forth.
And there's a conflict of interest clause in the bylaws as well, so that would protect.
I don't have a question, but I just want to say thanks for doing that work and the due diligence and to, give us more options to consider. I really appreciate that.
Of course. Any other questions? So we just need to, in order for us to recruit the board members, we do need to get your direction on what the composition should be. Do you agree to the recommendation or not?
Yeah, so it would just be a motion to accept the recommendation, but if you wanted to tweak it, then you can have a conversation with each other about how you might want to shift some things.
The only thing that I was going to say is currently what's before us is for the composition and the bylaws. And do we need to adjust the?
You'll need to adjust the motion just to be
There we
for the
go.
composition.
Okay.
Ms. Fidelis, could you repeat the recommendation of the district for the composition again?
I'll ask Ms. McCulick to do it since I know she knows it for sure, and I'm just going by my memory, which is fading every day.
So there's 5 sections to the recommendation. So one is to have a director that represents the teachers union, AFT, and then another director to represent CSEA, the classified union, one director to represent the Jefferson Elementary School District Governing Board, one director from the superintendent's office, so the superintendent or business assistant superintendent, and then community members. And so we left that open-ended and no more than 9 members.
So there would be 4 that are part of the district, and then 5 based on
Up
this.
to.
Got it.
But we're really seeking at least 3 community members.
Perfect.
I don't have any questions. I don't know if there are any questions from my board colleagues, but if there aren't, I'd like to make a motion to approve the recommendation for this composition of the Board of Directors as stated by Ms. McCulick.
Second.
I was going to ask, so in terms of the recommendation, do we need to specify 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 community members, or
I think you could just say what's listed in the agenda item because
Okay.
it's there.
okay, cool. So there's a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That was unanimous. Thank you very much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Kulik. Next item is item 9F, Board Resolution number 22-09-14, adoption of annual appropriation GAN limit. The administration recommends approval of resolution number 22-9-14 for the annual appropriations GAN limit for fiscal year 21-22 actuals and fiscal year 22-23 estimate. Ms. Laura.
Good evening. So what the GAM limit is it was Government Code 7902 was passed as Proposition 4 in 1979. Simply put, the purpose of the limit is to keep inflation adjusted per person government spending under 1978-79 levels. So every year, our tax appropriation, depending if we get more or get less, we adjust the GAN limit for inflation and population size, which would be our average daily attendance. This is something we routinely do every year, and it is included in our SACS unaudited actuals form that we submit to San Mateo County Office of Education, as well as California Department of Education.
Cool. Thank you. Any questions or comments from board members? If not, I will entertain a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution number 220914 for the annual appropriations GAN limit for fiscal year 2021-22 and fiscal year 22-23.
Second.
There's a first and second. Ms. Coveri, may I please get a roll call?
Ms. Leah Inga Anawai,
Aye.
Ms. Jordan,
Aye.
Mr. Ali,
Aye.
Mr. Koo.
Aye. Thank you. That was unanimous. Next item is item 9G, resolution number 22-9-14A, resolution committing funds held in Fund 01 General Fund. The administration recommends approval of resolution number 22-09-14A, resolution to committing funds held in Fund 01 General Fund. Ms. Laura.
So this resolution is more geared towards, if you guys can recall, in our budget adoption meeting, because of the Prop 98 reserve account in California, the balance of that is above 3%. That triggered all LCFF funded districts within California to have a statutory 10% ending fund balance limit, right? So what we're doing here is, in the case that we're above the 10%, those funds get reverted back to the state. So what we're saying is we're allocating and committing these funds to future salary increases for our employees, which keep us underneath the 10% threshold.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from board members?
Is this a common practice for districts, or was this your idea, or?
That's a great question. In my years working in school business, the Prop 98 reserve account has never reached 3%. So throughout the state of California, and not so much in San Mateo County, because there's a lot of schools that are basic aid funded by property tax, but throughout California, there's many different ways. Some school districts decide to go towards routine restricted maintenance. Some we've done OPEB, other post-employment benefits. We've done committing funds towards health and welfare benefits as the premium increases. There's a lot of different ways. I just know that moving forward, we would like to, with inflation, be able to give our employees some type of a raise.
The only comment I was going to make, it honestly doesn't matter who made the decision or where it came from. I think it's the best use of those funds instead of going back to the government. And so, I mean, we've been talking about being able to give our teachers raises. And if this is going to be the way to do it, I'm in full support.
Yeah, and I think that with the cost of living in the Bay Area, it's a great thing to be able to attract and retain the best educators we can, because we do compete with some of the most, I wouldn't want to say wealthy, but some of the best funded school districts in the state of California. So, I think it's a great thing.
Cool, thank you. Any other comments, questions? If not, I will entertain a motion on this item.
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 220914A, resolution committing funds held in Fund 1 General Fund.
Second.
First and second, Ms. Goveri, may I please get a roll call?
Ms. Leah Inga Anawai,
Aye.
Ms. Jordan,
Aye.
Mr. Ali,
Aye.
Mr. Koo.
Aye. That was unanimous. Thank you. Next item is item 9H, fiscal year 21-22 unaudited actuals. Mr. Michael Loro, Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, CBO, will present the district's unaudited actuals financial statement. The administration recommends approval of the unaudited actuals for the fiscal year 21-22. Hello again.
Hello again. I was just thinking when I was sitting in my chair, we should get a clicker to go through the slides, and my dreams came true, and there's one here. Like, manifest. We do have the budget for it. This is, in all the presentations I give, this is the presentation instead of looking forward towards the future, we're looking backwards, right? And we're looking at where do we predict we would be, where did we end up, and just a general recap of our financial health and our plans, not plans, but just what's coming after this. So for the public, if anybody's watching, unit members, board members, members of the audience, The unaudited actuals, like I said earlier, are from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2022. If we approve them tonight, they will be sent to the county, who then submit that to CDE. Later on this year, we're going to have auditors come in, and actually they've been working throughout this last year, but they'll be finalizing, looking at our audit on how we did, and then we'll be presenting to you our the audit report. So I'm going to go through some of these slides. I'm going to have some bullet points of the main takeaways, and then there's going to be a lot of numbers. I just want there to be some sticking points that you guys can take notes on. You know, as we go through, just bear with me. And if you have questions, don't be afraid to ask. So for fund summary, our unrestricted fund 1 decreased $7.8 million. We'll get into why that happened, or if it was intentional or not. Restricted fund 1 balance increased $5 million. Our fund 13 did really well and increased. Fund 20, our other post-employment benefits increased 9.2 million, and Fund 21 decreased 9 million on account of our capital projects as they've been going through. And so here, a visual representation of what I was talking about. Lots of numbers, and we did see some changes in Fund 1 unrestricted, but that was intentional. So if we look at our unrestricted general fund, total revenues was a little under $61 million. Total expenditures and transfers out, $68 million. So that excess of expenditures and transfers out leads us to a deficit of $7.8 million, bringing our fund balance from $14.5 million to $6.7 million. Now, if you guys can recall, from the committal funds that you just passed a moment ago, the reason why we had moved $9.2 million from Fund 1 into Fund 20 is because we were over the 10% statutory limit set by the state of California. So that's preserving the funds for the district's use. And right now it's being committed towards other post-employment benefits. If we didn't move that out and we didn't have the 10% reserve limit, we would have ended the year in the positive about $1.3 million, which is equivalent to the rollover that school sites would then get again to spend this year. So right now, our unrestricted general fund balance is 7.61%, so we're underneath the limit. 2.8 million of that is our required statutory 3% reserve for economic uncertainty. We keep $30,000 in revolving cash in case we need to issue a check for services or an emergency. We have other designations of $1.4 million and $2.4 million of unappropriated funds. Here again, here's a representation visually of second interim and our unaudited actuals. So I have other designations highlighted here at $1.4 million. How that $1.4 million breaks out, every year our school sites receive discretionary funds for students and running school sites. And part of that, we roll over 100% to the school sites. So this $1.4 million is going back to our schools for them to be spending directly on our students. One thing I do want to make note here is in prior years, we've kept site donations in unrestricted funds, but we decided to move them towards restricted funds because it's better. It sits out of our unrestricted and it doesn't fall within the 10%. And it's also their donation funds. So they're restricted in nature, how we spend them based on how they're donated to us, right? So this is another visual representation of our entire unrestricted and restricted fund balance. In prior years, our restricted fund balance wasn't as big, but due to COVID, the state addressing learning loss mitigation, we've gotten a lot more restricted dollars targeted for specific reasons, right? So here's some unrestricted general fund changes since our second interim. So we saw a slight decrease in revenue for what we predicted at second interim. And that was February 2021. At the time, we did not have a commitment of moving funds out of Fund 1 into Fund 20. So that explains the major variance in transfers out. And we did have a decrease in contributions to restricted programs. So that's special education, routine restricted maintenance, just restricted programs, dollars that we get from the state or from the federal government that have a specific purpose. Some of the changes since second interim, like I said, the revenues didn't change much. There was a slight variation of certificated salaries due to the additional supplemental concentration grant funds that we had gotten. If you guys can recall back into the spring, you guys approved a plan on how we were going to spend those and utilize those supplemental concentration dollars, and we utilized them towards certificated salaries. We had some underspending in materials and supplies, a little bit in contracted services. Most of the variance from what we predicted in the springtime till the end of the year was the transfer of funds to Fund 20. And here's a visual representation of where the money came in for revenues and what the variances were, just so you guys have it in detail. Same thing for unrestricted general fund expenditures, just line by line, what the changes were and then what we ended up at, right? So I said there was some contribution savings. So through the year, when there is a decrease in contributions from our unrestricted pot of funds to our restricted pot of funds, it's a net savings because we're not allocating money from one fund to, from unrestricted to restricted. There were savings in our special education program. When it comes to special education, to be conservative, we budget for our most needy students, students who require one-on-one support, the contracted services that come along with it, the transportation cost. So when things shake out at the end of the year, we always see a little bit of savings there, which is a good thing. Although we still do provide 100% of those IEPs. We did have a little bit more spending in our routine restricted maintenance. We did have a couple of roofing projects that we paid for this year. So we saw a bump up in expenditures there, as well as other restricted programs like Title I, Title II. So in total, we saved about $700,000 there in contributions. So here again, here's the visual I'm trying to give. I believe the next slide, we're going to be getting into the $10.1 million restricted fund balance, the biggest piece of the pie. So the reason why we increased so much in restricted fund balance is because the state and the federal government are giving us, as you all are aware, of ESSER 3, ELOP, ELOG, all these different dollars have plans attached to them. The federal and state government are sending us money dialed in for specific purposes, right? So we're kind of reverting back from LCFF and LCAP, right, where we got unrestricted dollars to spend how we seemed fit. Now we're getting a lot more money. It's going back to like categorical programs, funding for specific purposes across the state. We also got the $1.26 million in the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant, which we'll be spending in 24, 25, 25, 26, and other just restricted dollars that we can carry forward. And here's another visual representation of how that all breaks out. The note on the bottom says this does not include 22-23 ELOP and mandated block grants. So if you guys can recall, we're slated to get $4 million in ELOP, and for mandated block grants, another $10 million. This isn't included in here. Remember, this is looking backwards, not forwards.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant, is that for professional development?
That is for professional development.
And then one other quick question about the $30,000 revolving cash. Might be a question for you and Mr. Vidales, but is that enough? Because where does that number 30,000 come from?
So I guess we,
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead.
think last year we increased that sum primarily to help us be a little bit more fluid with our workforce housing, where we have to pay permit fees, and it's just an estimate of what we think we might need within, usually it takes 2 weeks to request a check to be cut from the county going through the regular requisition process. And so this is something that Ms. Cussler and I and Mr. Heath, and we looked at all of the different types of expenses related to the workforce housing that we thought would be a good fund amount to be able to draw on to pay a fee or a permit or something like that.
Okay.
So
Yeah, that-
things that they can't wait 2 weeks to get a check for.
So far, 30,000 has been fine.
Yeah, so that was very well put, Mr. Vidales. There's been plenty of times where Mr. Heath comes in on a Friday or Thursday and he needs to check with a quick turnaround in order to not hold up permitting, just hold up the project. So 30,000 so far has been more than enough for us. Most certainly anything over, when we process a check to the County Office of Education, if it's over 100,000, the backup that needs to go and support with that check, it's pretty detailed. So $30,000 is a comfortable limit, very comfortable limit. So you guys are aware, we've gotten lots of learning loss mitigation funding. We've been very strategic in the usage of this funding. We've been, working with Ms. Martinez, our student services director, mental health supports, additional hours for instructional aids to provide supports to students. Over the past year, we had itinerant subs in a time where it's very difficult to get substitute teachers, as Ms. Valenci knows. It's nice having the extra support on site. Professional development for our teachers. We did have a health and wellness stipend. We are continuing to use and spend the funds how the board directed us in ESSER 3 plans, ELOG plans, and obviously as we continue on, figuring out strategies with Ms. Scott on how we could best serve our students in the community. But we've been very fortunate in our use of these funds. So what I want to show here is categorical grants. So these dollar amounts aren't sitting in our restricted fund balance because they are allocated to us, but we haven't spent them yet. So they're only recognized to the extent that they're spent, if that makes sense. So, in ESSER funds, ELOP, federal funds, Title III funds, money that we only receive, it's almost like a reimbursement. So it's not going to show on the $10.149 million, but this is money that's still available for us to utilize. And this is it's a lot, the sheet, but this is what I've been using to track all the learning loss mitigation funding. Moving forward, we still have another $5 million that's unallocated for the out years. So going back to what we were explaining in prior board meetings is finding out what works, what doesn't work, where do we need to expand, do we need to continue with itinerant subs? Do we need to give instructional assistants more time? It gives us a little bit more flexibility, right? And so I just wanted you guys to have this, and after the presentation, if you guys have questions about it, we can go over it. So closing remarks, right? First interim is the next report, and we'll be doing that in November, end of November, December 14th. So this will include the $4.1 million increase to the unrestricted general fund of the 22-23 adopted budget. Remember, moving forward, we're funded on a 3-year average ADA, and this year we're getting the 19-20% of ADA, which protects our revenue somewhat. But I just want to let you guys know that our current enrollment as of September 12th was an additional decrease of 71 students of what we budgeted. So we'll see a slight change in that in our funding, but the funded ADA levels out in about year 3, which is 24-25. We're also working on our unduplicated pupil percentage. That's our at-risk youth, homeless, foster, English learners. Like you guys are well aware that we do have universal meals. So we're still trying really hard to push those free and reduced meal applications. They're not mandatory to fill out, but highly suggested. And I'll be giving you guys an update at the next board meeting on the turnout on that. But overall, I think that we ended the year on a high note. We've been very fiscally conservative in the last couple of years with great cause. And we're in a position for success across the district. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Laura. Any questions, comments? If not, this is an action item, so the board wants to require action.
This is a
is that
action, yeah.
Yeah.
I make a motion that we approve the 2021 to 22 unaudited actuals.
Second?
First and a second, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Ms. Laura. Next item 10A, certificated personnel, certificated retirement 2021-2022. The administration recommends acceptance of the retirement request from Mary Echo, ELA and social studies teacher at TRP, effective June 11th, 2022. A request and appropriate resolution be prepared commending her for a year's service with the district. Ms. Echo has been employed by the district since August 30th, 2000. Ms. Valenti.
Hello. All right. Everybody gets this one passed around. So again, as you noted, Ms. Echo's been with the district since 2000. She and I began working together when I moved over to TRP in 2002. And I just want to say this is a person that has so much in her heart for our students. And while I think she would have liked to put in another few years, this was the right time for her. And I just want to appreciate her for all the years she put in. She worked in multiple schools, was always one to step up and step forward and help out. And I just want to wish her the best in her retirement. And again, recommend that the board accept her retirement and that we put together the appropriate resolution for her work with us.
I'd like to make a motion, as recommended by the administration, for the acceptance of the retirement request from Mary Echo, ELA, social studies teacher at TRP, effective June 11th, 2022. And request an appropriate resolution be prepared commending her for her years of service with the district. Thank you, Ms. Echo.
I second that motion.
First and a second, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That was unanimous, and thank you, Ms. Echo, for your service to our district. Next item 10E, administrative appointments 2022-2023. The administration recommends approval of the following administrative appointment: Brian Bethel, Dean of Academics at TRP Middle School, effective September 26, 2022, 1M WMA Step 2. Ms. Valenti.
Yeah, thank you. Oftentimes my job is like a Tetris game. Things fall out from below. I look up to see what's fallen down, and sometimes nothing's falling down. But we are very fortunate, given the situation with folks in education leaving, that we have a fantastic candidate in the name of Brian Bethel to come in as the next Dean of Academics at TRP, an administrative position. He's here with us tonight, and if the board kindly accepts the district's recommendation to approve his appointment as the next dean, he'll say a few things on his own, but we're very happy to have him, and I know that the school's really ready to put him to work. So with that, I'll make my strong recommendation
that the board approve his position.
I'll make a motion to approve the administrative appointment of Brian Bethel, Dean of Academics at TRP Middle School, effective September 26th. Thank you, Mr. Bethel. We're excited to have you join.
Second.
First and a second, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. That was unanimous. And congratulations, Mr. Bethel. Would you like to make some comments?
I did. I thought I might as well dress up. First, I want to say thank you all. Nice to be here. Thank you for having me. I appreciate this and this opportunity just to address you all. So I have about 15 years of educational experience here in the Bay Area. I've worked in large public schools, small private schools. One of the things I've always strived to do is to offer our students a guarantee to a free and equitable education. As far as our students are concerned, 99% of education is building relationships. As I transitioned into administration, I brought that with me. I think that 99% of the work we do is in building relationships with each other and building that community that we have. My couple days I got to shadow at TRP last year. I got to see that community in action. I was there and able to feel that community with the students, with the staff, with the administration. So I'm very excited to join the administration and the district. Thank you very much.
Congratulations again, and welcome to the district as well. Next item is item 11A, classified personnel resignations. The administration recommends approval of the resignation of the following classified employees and requests an appropriate resolution be prepared. Oh, sorry. Yes. Oh, sorry, my bad.
We can't get him to work without F.
Sorry, my bad. 10F, administrative waiver 2022-2023. An administrative waiver is required for Brian Bethel, Dean of Academics at TR Policita Middle School for the 2022-2023 school year, in order for Mr. Bethel to complete Cycle 2 and Cycle 3 of the Administrative Services Program. Mr. Dallas.
Thank you.
Or not Mr. Dallas.
That's all right. Well, he's on the agenda much more than I am tonight. So again, like many of us, as we work through our education to get our credentials, Brian's in the process of finishing that up. And one of the steps in that is for the board to approve an administrative waiver so we can move forward with his administrative services credential while he completes his schooling on that.
I move that we approve the administrative waiver for Brian Bethel for the 2022-2023 school year.
Second.
First and a second, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous. Now to 11A, classified personnel resignations. The administration recommends approval of the resignations of the following classified employees and requests an appropriate resolution be prepared commending those with 10 or more years service with the district. Ophelia Caicedo, Campus Safety Assistant at TR Policita, date of hire November 10th, 2014, effective date of resignation is August 15th, 2022. Carl John Gascon, an instructional assistant for PE at JFK, date of hire was November 3rd, 2008, effective date of resignation was August 15th, 2022. Marie Sokset, Sang, instructional assistant of ASP, Thomas Edison, date of hire was May 5th, 2003. Effective date of resignation was August 15th, 2022. And Lucy Braun, school administrative assistant at TR Policita, date of hire was August 10th, 2017. Effective date of resignation was September 13th, 2022. Ms. Valenti.
Yes, just want to thank all these folks. I was doing a little math here. We have 46 years of collective work in our district. And, you know, for every person, whether it be just for a small tenure or those of us that have worked 20 or 30 years, I want to say thank you all to these folks for their time and wish them the best of luck in their future endeavors, and request that, again, the board approve their resignation requests and prepare commendations for those that have 10 or more years of service.
I want to make a motion to approve the resignation of the classified employees as stated.
Second.
First and a second, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That was unanimous, and thank you to you all for your service to our district as well. Next item is item 12A under Board Policy Administrative Regulations. Board Policy Administrative Regulations, March 2022. CSBA Board Policy Updates, second reading. The board will review and revise Board Policy Administrative Regulations from March 2022 CSBA Board Policy Updates as stated in a second reading. Are there any questions, comments, or updates anyone would like to make? If not, I will entertain a motion on this item.
I'd like to make a motion for President Ku's most favorite part of the agenda. That we approve the revisions made on the board policies and administrative regulations from March 2022 CSBA board policy updates as stated.
Second.
There's a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 That was unanimous. Next item is item 13, Board Governance Matters. 13A, Leadership Transition Planning. Board members will review their options for selecting the next JESD superintendent. They will discuss and decide whether the board will consider pursuing the interview of internal district administrator candidates or whether to engage in a wider search with the support of a search firm's consulting services and use a timeline by which either might be conducted in order to make their selection. Last Friday, Superintendent Vidalis announced to the JESD community of his intention to retire from his role as superintendent at the end of the 2022-2023 school year. On behalf of our board, we'd like to extend our heartfelt thanks to Superintendent Vidalis for all of his dedication to JESD for the past 15 years, with 12 years specifically as our superintendent. I just want to also just provide opportunity for our board members to provide any remarks in regards to this item, and then allow the superintendent to provide any additional remarks and clarify any of the next steps related to this process. Do board members have any comments they'd like to make?
Well, congratulations on a job well done so far, because it's not done yet. But yeah, I mean, it's not a secret. A lot of people know that when I ran for a school board, it was because I wanted to get on and help support the district in general, but specifically Superintendent Vidalis. I had worked with him before, and it's been a pleasure serving on the board and first, learning from Superintendent Vidalis, maybe the first 3 months or so. And then I was fine. And I realized that collectively we're his boss. So that was kind of cool. So, but like I said, I've enjoyed serving and working with you, and you deserve it. You deserve to take this time off. You've given a lot of yourself, even your health, so I really appreciate it. And I know the community appreciates the work that you've done.
So obviously I'm the newest board member, and so I haven't had an experience with another superintendent. And you were so welcoming from the moment, even before the election results were fully announced. You reached out, you were so welcoming. You made sure that my onboarding was seamless. I never felt like I didn't know what was going on. Your leadership has been instrumental in the way this district is run, and it shows. So I've heard horror stories about what it is like to have a superintendent that is not connected to their board. And I have not experienced that. I remember going to trainings in the beginning, and some people had not even, met their board, talked to their superintendent. And I'm like, oh, wow, I'm not even fully sworn in yet, and I've already had multiple conversations. So I wish you the best of luck. You deserve it. it's going to be some hard shoes to fill. But you got some more months to help us along the way to make sure that we fill this position properly. And congratulations again.
Superintendent Vidalis. 7 years ago, I had the opportunity to be engaged in a conversation through a community leader, an esteemed community leader who we both call a friend. And, she had nothing but great things to share about Superintendent Vidalis. And then I asked what the hook was. And she said, he's actually just seeking out community leaders who might be interested to run for the board. And I never envisioned myself sitting in this seat. I didn't. And you've got to see yourself in this space. You've got to own this opportunity. And I didn't see myself in this decision-making seat, especially as a woman of color. But through the hardships that I experienced as a mother of 6, and particularly my daughter Harmony, I felt encouraged. But what sealed the deal for me was you. And I think you are going to continue to hear individuals outside of this board echo those very sentiments. Because we don't get invested in this difficult work just because we want to. This is hard work. And I don't think you get enough credit for all that you do. Your humble servant leadership has been inspirational to me. Many times when I lose my way, I pick up the phone and I call you, and you always remind me why I entered into this work and why I stayed. Because at the height of the pandemic in 2020, I hadn't pulled my papers to run for re-election. And you patiently waited for me to figure that out. But even along the way, you continued to check in on me to see, hey, Bo, just checking in on you. And you continue to give me that level of warmth, but you also let me know that I was needed. And it was that validation that encouraged me to come back and finish the work that I started with you and the amazing leaders that I sit with. So I want to thank you from the core of my soul, Superintendent Vidalis, because I think that you've allowed me to show one of the best versions of myself as we approached equity in this space. I appreciate that we were able to build that into this district. We talked about it when I came on board, but I didn't see it. We talked about many of the things that we dreamt about through the youth cinema project, through this workforce housing project, through ethnic studies. These were things that advocates such as Trustee Ali, we only dreamt about, but you helped us not just envision it, you helped us to bring it home. So I thank you for leaning in with us, and I wish you well. And I imagine that you will be sought out during your retirement, and you might even be busier than you are right now. But I encourage you to enjoy every moment. If the pandemic has done anything, it has helped us to magnify not just all of the pain, but that we need to be intentional about the time we need to commit ourselves to those who've been waiting to spend that time with us. So I wish you all the best. And I usually call you Superintendent Vidalis, but today, my friend, I have mad love and admiration for you, Bernie. Mad love and admiration and deep respect. Thank you. Thank you for investing in this district and this board. Thank you.
I can't. I'm sorry. But just want to echo all the other members' comments saying thank you for your service to our district. I remember I was going to say 7 years ago as well, too. I was on being interviewed for the board, and I had a conversation about being interested. Our superintendent reached out, sort of provide an overview about what being a board member is like. And I remember I unfortunately didn't get selected, but I'm also sitting next to a great colleague who did get the role instead. And I was going to say that after I didn't get selected, I remember receiving a letter. I don't know if you remember, received a letter in the mail, and you just said, "I hope you stay in touch and get involved." But as he knew I was a UC Berkeley graduate, he was a Stanford graduate, so he sent me a Stanford card, telling me to stay involved. And then a couple months later, lo and behold, I got to be on the board. And I was just going to say, when I've explained to people about the onboarding I got as a board member, I think everybody was very surprised how much our superintendent actually provided for me, because I remember like 2 weeks in, we sat down for 3-4 hours just about what it is to be on board, went through every different department. And I think some other districts and other trustees were just wishing they had that for our board for being onboarding. So even that alone has sort of helped me get ahead as a trustee. Along the way is just being able to sort of know our superintendent as a superintendent, but also just in a more personal setting at trainings, conferences, school district events. You'll be missed. And I just want to say thank you for everything you've offered us. You provided us leadership along the way over the past couple of years, and just being superintendent, especially when we had questions, we didn't know what we were going to try to do on certain policies or certain concerns, but just your guidance and knowledge has been very valuable. So I just want to say thank you for that. I guess I'll now pass it over to Superintendent Dallas for any comments.
Thank you so much for your kind words and your encouraging words and supportive words, not just tonight, but throughout the last 12 years. I think Mr. Ali started 3 months after I started, and he's been along at my side since then, supporting and providing the encouragement. And, you know, the board as a whole plays a pivotal role in setting that direction and in providing the kind of support that the board can provide a superintendent to accomplish the direction that is being set. And this board, in all of its different iterations in the last 12 years, 15 years, has certainly done that and has been supportive of the Office of Superintendent, has been supportive of our students and community, has, when funds are available, allocated funds for special projects that, you know, we wouldn't be able to do on a typical basis, but knowing that the board valued certain activities, you know, we were able to find the funds and identify them so that we can follow through. And I appreciate that. I appreciate all of the personal connections that we had and moments and experiences, and those I hope can certainly continue. And I look forward to what's next. I'm excited about this district. I think this district is poised right now for I'm not going to say a different direction, but I think new and sustained energy to be able to take the next step. We're sort of coming to a place, and this is why I decided that now's the time to make my decision, where things are starting to coalesce and slow down. And if I was to stay, I would need to ramp up again, which I'm able to do, but I would feel very uncomfortable leaving in the middle of that after a year or two. So it's best to step aside right now, allow the board to select a new leader, a new executive that can carry forth the board's vision and direction, and can see it to the next phase, the next level of fruition. So thank you so much for what you've done. So, you know, we've talked about this, we often talk about this, and you've learned about this in your governance workshops, that there's like basically 3 different functions of a school board. And tonight, actually, you've done all 3 of them. The first one is to provide oversight and approve the district's budget and its interim and regular reports. And we did that today with approving the unaudited actuals, and that's your role, fiscal oversight. You don't do the fiscal management and the accounting, but you do provide that oversight and provide approval and ask questions. The second responsibility, Mr. Koo and Ms. Lina Anoai's favorite activity is to approve board policies and, more importantly, set direction for the district. And you did that today with, providing direction for the Educational Housing Board, approving this latest update of board policies. We're in the midst right now of writing a board equity policy that should be coming forth hopefully soon for your approval. These CSBA updates, they're not that exciting because they're just changing a word or two, and you're not really developing policy, but I think the equity policy is a development. And something that we've been working on a year and a half at least, if not longer. And then the last thing that the board does is employ and evaluate a superintendent. The superintendent is the sole employee of the school board. It's the person that the school board relies on to carry forth the vision, to implement the direction, to hire the staff needed to do that, and to appropriate the funds for that direction to be realized and vision to be realized. So it's a big responsibility, and you've heard it a lot at your governance sessions. Superintendent's your only employee. Everybody else works for the superintendent. Superintendent's the only one that works for you. People get confused about that and come to you with concerns and questions about my employees, and thank you for remembering to remind our community that, your only employee is me. Everybody else works for the superintendent and for the school district. So tonight you do have the opportunity to discuss how you might fill this vacancy. One is we can solicit interest and applications from any interested current administrators of our school district. And two is to go broader and to engage the services typically of a consulting firm that helps solicit and recruit applications broadly and also likely from within the school district. The timeline for both, it's been referenced, this school board can look very different in December and January than it does today. We know for sure we have 2 school board members who will not be with us. We hope that Mr. Ali is back and is favored with re-election. And we know Ms. Liangano will be back, but she also has hopes and aspirations to represent Daly City as a council member. And so those of you that have been recently can remember what it's like to be a new trustee. Can you imagine having to be tasked with the responsibility to now search for a new and hire a new superintendent? I think most of you, as I see now, are saying no, that would be too much, and it would be. So tonight, your decision is: do we do something internally, which I think can be accomplished before that November meeting, which would be the last meeting of this current board, and then, or do you table this and let the next board make this decision if they want to go out for a search firm, or if they want to consider interested candidates from within the district. So this is your decision, and you make this decision in public, which is another another value of this form of democratic government, is that you deliberate with each other in public. And we haven't had many boards already come into a decision like this, already been pre-decided. I don't think we've been pre-decided. I think you've been informed, but I don't think you have been pre-decided. So this is your opportunity to talk with each other and determine the direction you want to provide. For me, to then carry out your decision.
Thank you. Any thoughts or comments from board members on the route to take?
I wanted to ask a question with regards to the search. What is the timeline or projected timeline if we do internal versus broadening the search? What does that look like?
Generally, what I'm anticipating an internal search would be 2.5 months. Scheduling the different interviews and contract negotiations and final offer. Generally, with the external firms, there's a period of at least 6 weeks of recruiting and bringing in candidates from across the region or California, and then it's the 2.5 months. So it could be anywhere from 3.5 to 4 months before it's concluded. And I failed to say that that also comes with a cost, and for a district of our size, will likely be in the range of $30,000. We would request different proposals from different organizations that do this work, but from what I've gleaned, other districts of our size and what they've been paying, it's around, I would say, between 25 and 35, depending on the group that we would engage with and also the level of services that they provide. I would guess internally that we would still likely want to engage with at least a facilitator that's familiar with this, that might be able to guide you through this process so that you're not trying to figure this out in the dark. And, your previous experiences would also suggest that what can happen when you don't have a facilitator and you're in closed session. It's easy to get off topic. It's easy to go in circles. And I think a facilitator might support a steady conversation.
Superintendent Vidalis, is there a cost for the facilitator? What does that look like?
I would imagine that there would be a cost as well, but certainly
not
it's
$30,000.
not $30,000. I'm going to guess it's under 10, because it would be facilitating meetings. The recruitment is done internally, and it would be facilitating your perhaps 2 or 3 meetings that you would have.
Have any of us ever hired superintendent? So, well, regardless of cost, and maybe I'm biased, I think our district is desirable. And, I've seen other district meetings and the chaos, especially during the pandemic, and we were one of the lucky ones. We didn't have those issues. And to your point, Superintendent Vidalis, we're doing some really great things, and things are slowing down, right? We're doing our ethnic studies. We are starting workforce housing. We're coming up with policies to help foster ethical, the way we run our business, our district. And so I'm kind of torn in the sense that I understand that it would be easier to, look internally, but I also am torn because I don't want to limit the amazing applicants that we may have if we were to have a broader search. However, I also understand the cons of that. If we have a broader search and let's say that person is coming from Southern California, are they going to stay 1.5 years, 2 years and leave because of the distance, of the cost of the Bay Area living? And so I don't know, what are my fellow trustees' thoughts on any of that?
I'll jump in. I feel the same way you do. Yeah, I'm torn, but the thing that resonates with me the most is that I don't want to limit the choices that we may have if we widen the search. While I know there's just a wealth of talent that is that lives internally in our district. But I would imagine any district would want the best and the brightest. Not to say they're not already here, but I think if we widen the pool, and I agree with you, regardless of the cost, if we're seeking out someone who we think would lead us well in this district and in our community, I'm open to supporting what we decide as a collective, because I believe that we can come to a solid decision this evening. But I too am torn, but I don't feel comfortable limiting it if we're open to that, widening the search.
I was just gonna say, in terms of the options, I think, I mean, I won't be on the board in a couple of months, but I will personally say, like, as a new trustee when I first joined, there's definitely so much coming towards you, in the first year or two or three or four, that I personally know that I feel like hiring a superintendent is definitely one of those biggest of them all, just on top of trying to understand the budget, curriculum, the equity, workforce housing. I know there's gonna be a ton on the plate. So I think from my perspective, I feel that a new person on the board trying to do this huge task might seem daunting, maybe sometimes terrifying, personally, in my opinion. So I think that's just my only thoughts in terms of sort of the approach we take and sort of figure out, is it better to have a board where the average tenure here has at least gone through at least one or two budgets, has at least gone through different types of board policy adoptions, curriculum changes, and this kind of stuff, or sort of that uncertainty, especially when it comes down to sort of trying to tackle all of that at once as a new trustee. I think that's just my only thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I'm not torn, and I'm actually glad that you both have that perspective, but I'm actually thinking of hiring internally, and I'm thinking from the perspective of the superintendent, not the new board members. That I don't know how comfortable I am exactly with what you said. Someone coming from Southern California or something, and selling themselves very well to us, but not being a good fit. And I've seen it happen here. Basically what you said, right? And I just don't want to go through that, you know. I think anyone that we would choose internally, that I don't feel like I would have to battle with that person. So that's just where I am right now, more leaning towards internally hiring, and also I'm leaning toward us waiting for the new board members, though, to be a part of possibly making that decision as well.
So I agree with you, Trustee Koo. I feel like I'm still a new board member. I just have, year two still going here. And I remember when we first did goals, I was like, what are we doing? Why? Okay, that's a lot to digest. So I understand that. I hear what you're saying as well. But, if we broaden the search, you still get internal candidates. So it doesn't preclude them from the process. And if we do want to include the new board in that process, doing the broader search may give them a chance to do that, because if not, we may make the decision beforehand. I'm open to both. I'm not leaning towards one or the other. I understand the pros and the cons. I think as a collective, how do we all feel?
I can provide a little bit of perspective in terms of what this board has done in the past. So when I was selected as superintendent, the board decided to just select from internal candidates. And I'm not sure I would have applied if it had been broadened, just because you are interviewing against people who are very polished and and not that that's a bad thing, but that we have seen the kinds of candidates that a broad search can sometimes yield. Not always, but sometimes, right? And we just need to look at districts up and down the peninsula. folks who don't stick around past a year or two and they move on. So that's what happened when I was selected. My predecessor was actually selected in a process that was a nationwide search. I can't remember. I sort of feel like he did not apply for the superintendency. He expressed interest. He didn't apply. The board went through the whole process. They couldn't find anybody they liked, and then they just called him and said, "Hey, would you be our superintendent? Because we think you're the best fit for what we need and what we want." After engaging in a full process, like he too did not. I'd have to check. I don't think he entered into that process, but he did express an interest in it, and then was ultimately asked to serve. Prior to that, there was an interim superintendent. I think prior to Mr. McIntosh, we had Dr. Wilson. I think she's a result of a broad search, and I think that the board has engaged in broad searches prior to that. So it's just with me, I was just an internal search, and Mr. Rizzo was a result of a broad search that didn't go well, and realizing that they wanted to select him. So that's sort of what's happened. And I don't know, Ms. Cobra, does that sound about right to you? Yeah.
I was just gonna double check. Were there any public comments on this item? Just double check.
None.
Okay.
You said a broad search that didn't go well, and then you also said interim superintendent, and both of those scared me. And so I guess if we do an internal search or a broad search and something goes awry and we don't select someone by the time you leave, I'm assuming that it's required that we then have someone interim acting in the position, and how does that work? I guess I just need to understand what could go wrong.
So that is a possibility in a worst case scenario. I don't think you'll get there. I think you have enough time for a proper selection. Part of the reason why I announced early is to give you that runway to use if you need it. The interim superintendent that was appointed just prior to Mr. Rizzo was because the previous superintendent left late in the school year, late spring. There was no time for a search, and the board wanted to engage in a full search. And so the interim superintendent, which is it's a very viable strategy that school districts utilize sometimes, just to help things coalesce, and especially if I've seen it work really well in situations where it's very messy, or the previous superintendent leaving is messy, and an interim superintendent can come in and sort of coalesce the team and set things straight. I don't think we're in that situation. You certainly have enough time. But if I had announced I'm going to retire in December, that might be, you might say, okay, we're going to get an interim superintendent for the rest of the year, and then engage in a broad search after that. So, yeah, and then searches, they vary. I have very good friends who are results of a search process. My better friends are not. Even though they eventually, get land and get another superintendency as a result of a search. But in San Mateo County, half would be internal placements, and the other half would be search.
So I had a question. I will say that I'm always, in my mind, I always think we should always choose to pick from internal teams. But the hypothetical is that if we do not have some courageous leaders who determine at this time that that is something they want to do, and we look at the pool of candidates, is there an opportunity then to decide to change how we do things and broaden the search? Or is that determined, will we have that opportunity to say, we did receive some internal candidates, and we would like to now broaden the search. We didn't see what we thought we were looking for. What would that look like?
So we're sort of in a complicated situation because essentially we have two school boards. We have school boards for the fall of 22, and then we'll have a different school board because even one member makes a different school board in the winter of 23. So it would be very difficult to carry forth any historical knowledge of something that was begun in the fall of 22 to continue into the winter of 23. Possible, but difficult. And so the question, as it was phrased initially, I think, is, does this board want to engage in a process? And the only process you really have enough time to engage in is an internal one. And there is no time to engage in a broad search and go through all the different steps that the consulting firms like to take a board through. Or do you just want to table this for the next board to pick up in January and then make the same considerations that you're making today?
Yeah, so I was in favor of tabling it.
I think I might be in favor of tabling it too, and the only reason why I say that is because of what you said. I mean, I don't know what candidates have, or since you've announced maybe people that are interested, but if we as a board are not happy with them, I don't want to force something just because we need a superintendent. I really do want the person to be a fit. And as much as I trust your word, Mr. Vandalas, as you mentioned, this is our one job as that you're the one employee, and I want to make sure we do it right, especially seeing as this is probably the first time that any of us have hired a superintendent. It's probably going to be the first time for some of the new board members coming on board, and making a rush decision doesn't seem smart.
I will say I'm actually in agreement to table it, because as mentioned, we have at least two board members who will not be on the board next January. However, let me just throw a wrench in there. I think if we are open to at least making a decision on the process, that maybe we can do that tonight. The reason why I mentioned that is that we can at least start the process. If we decide tonight that, we want to start and kick off an internal recruitment process, I mean, those are two separate things in my mind, that we would decide what the process is. Because eventually, you said 2 to 3 months, this board is going to look different in 2 to 3 months, regardless of not starting the process now or later. So I'm just looking at the timeline either way.
No, I do believe that it can be accomplished in 2 months is essentially the time frame we have. We have September, rest of September, October, November. The term ends the second Thursday of December. So there's still, and our last regular board meeting scheduled right now is November 9th. It doesn't mean that you can't schedule other board meetings if you needed them after that to complete a process. I think that let's say if you made the decision today, like I said, I think the only process that you can engage in is the internal hiring and interviewing process. Because if you decide to go external and broadly, the new board would need to be a part of that, and developing the list of qualities that they would like to be in search of. The job of the superintendent is a tough job, but it's not tough because it's hard tasks, right? It's easy things to do. No, not easy. The tasks are not, it's not like you're working on a difficult puzzle and you're just racking your brains. It is doable by a lot of different people. The role and is what is the best match for the district as the board understands the needs of the district, and what's the best match for the board. And school boards change all the time. I got hired by a school board, and 3 months into the job, 2 of those board members were not on the board, and I had 2 new school board members, and so they had to live with me. And you know, the school boards always turn over, but I think what's most helpful and what I think this board has to offer is that you know the district, you know the needs of the district, you know where the district has come, and you have a sense of what the district might need to get to the next level. That will take a while for new school board members to get, and they'll just rely on the 3 returning, if we have 3 returning, or the 2 returning, if we have 2. So.
Can I get back in?
Yeah.
So, I mean, the reason why I said I'm in favor of internal, but the reason why I said I was in favor also of tabling is because of what, you know, you both said in the beginning, but I'm still in favor of internal. So if you're leaning towards doing it now and that's our only choice, then, you know, that's where I am right now. Is now saying let's decide the process right now, which would be internal.
Okay. No, thank you, Superintendent Videlis, for stating what you shared. With that said, I'm going to withdraw. I know I'm prolonging the process, but I will actually agree with trustees Ali and Jordan to table.
Sounds like there's consensus. I guess, Mr. Vidal, what is the action the board needs
So
to
we
take?
just need a motion to table this decision till January or February.
Okay.
So I wasn't clear of about President Kuhl's position. I need to hear from you again, please.
I would agree with that.
I don't know. I feel like my opinion is a little bit different, knowing that I will not be on the board in a couple months or so. So I think
But if you were going to be on the board,
if I was on the board today, or I mean, I am on the board today, but if I was on the board a couple months, and I'm a little torn, I would say 2. I would say personally, just because I think as like a trustee, I think we want to make the best decision with all the information we know about the district, what they're doing and such. I also do see that value of having a superintendent reflect the new board as well too, just be able to provide that perspective. Maybe the board has different priorities or different goals they want to have in mind. So I'm a little torn just even on that perspective alone too. When it comes down to internal or external, the value I see of an internal is being able to sort of provide that knowledge of what's been going on for the past couple of years, especially the person's been in the district long enough, seeing what's going on the board level, having some of that collaboration with the board. I think that provides a lot of value, especially for helping the board make a good decision. I mean, going external, I don't think is ever a bad thing. Or external, I mean, is ever a bad thing, just because I think there is also value of having that different perspective. Maybe there is something in the board or something in the district that we're not doing correctly, or at least might not be the best approach. So I definitely see that value there. And I would say even if it goes external, it doesn't necessarily mean that that person is coming from across the country. It could literally just be someone from another city in San Mateo County or in the Bay Area. So I see the value there as well too. I realized I didn't give you an actual answer. Personally, I think I just provided more rationale for all the options available. I don't know if that helped or if you guys would like other thoughts on my opinion.
made it harder. Oh my God.
I'm sorry. I feel like my full-time job is to be able to provide everyone.
So just a reflective component here. This board does tend to not like to make decisions. So that is your tendency, and you're moving in that direction right now. So just be a little bit metacognitive, and if it's the right thing to make that decision, then that's a great thing. But if you're doing it because that's the tendency of the way that the board works, then that may not be the best way to go about this. So I'm not expressing an opinion. I just, historically, I know that this board doesn't like to make decisions, and will table, and so.
So
Okay.
I can't speak for this board not tabling, because I don't think there's been a lot of tabling since I've been on the board. However, I mean, when you spoke about the new board not being able to understand what the needs of the district are, that also sat with me, because it's like, well, do we want 2 new board members, 3 new board members coming on board and saying, oh, I want someone that's nice and, someone that I can, corral with, but that's not what we need, right? And so this is really hard, and it's
I was going to say similarly. I feel like as like a new board member, like for example, like I'm sure we all agree that when you have a new board, you have like someone who is like as helpful as Bernie. Is the niceties of that good enough for a board kind of thing, or do you need to like have that in-depth knowledge of all those different things? And that's sort of where I think my opinion about like having a new board member try to decide that is really tough, because I think like, for example, like even for me, like say if you're doing a full-time job, try to hire somebody with, like for me, for like actually my newest job, I actually started interviewing somebody a month into my job. I would say personally, it's a little hard to be able to decide if you have enough background knowledge about what's going on to be able to decide versus having been there for a year or two. I think that's sort of like why I was sort of giving my thoughts on perspective about which board should decide and versus sort of the process there.
So I'm okay with making a decision. I don't think it's, I want to say that I agree with maybe making a motion to move forward with the process based on that statement. But I think because we are a board and we all have our own individual vote, even though it will become collective, if any of us disagree and then comes up that the collective wants to table or the collective wants to move forward with, an internal search. And I think let's move forward with trying to make a decision, even if we don't all agree to the same decision.
That takes me back to what I said. Takes me back to say, to start the process because of all that's been shared. Because there's a lot of wisdom and experience that sits here that I believe will help us to determine a solid candidate. Not to say that 2 other individuals that will enter the board, this coming year would not also bring expertise. But I do think because of the experience that we sit with right now and knowing our district, that is why I wanted to nudge the process along. So that's where I stand right now.
Is this a roll call vote?
It's likely a voice vote, but we can make it a roll call vote. And we do need a motion though, because I'm unclear where we are. We need a motion and a second, and then a voice vote.
Okay. I'll make a motion to pursue interviewing internal district administrators for the transition of your role.
Second.
I was going to say, do you need to clarify like timing wise, or how does it? I was going to double check with you on that.
Yeah, we will work to get this done before December 5th.
Okay. Sorry. So there's a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous. So that'll be the process. I'll let the superintendent just.
Okay, so that provides enough direction. I will aim to seek a a facilitator for the board. You need one. We observed you today.
Yes.
Not that it was bad. I think there was some really great opportunities and lots of thoughts came out, but I think you would benefit from having an external facilitator and someone that's not me, because I get caught up in it with you. What I would ask is, would it be okay? It's not a decision, just sort of direction of the board. Trustee Koo as a president of the board and Ms. Trustee Jordan as vice president help me review responses from facilitators and selecting the facilitator that would serve. I mean, I could do it by myself, but I would appreciate a board perspective. Okay, great. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. Thank you. Next item is 13B, District Superintendent Job Specifications. The administration recommends approval of the updated District Superintendent Job Specifications to be used in the recruitment of candidates for the position of District Superintendent. Mr. Vidal again.
Yeah, so preparing for this, went back to request what's the latest approval date. It was 2011, right before I was selected. But it was the exact same job specifications that were approved in 1984. And so I went through and I consolidated. I didn't take anything out. I updated some of the language that was in there. There is one bullet point in there that was a little bit odd and I didn't really understand, and I'd hope that maybe Mrs. Brizuela could be here to shed light on this. But there's one, I don't, Ms. Cora, can you find that for me, please? I don't have it at the top of my head, but it said the superintendent will I changed it to the superintendent will represent the community, will represent the employees when complaints by the community are made. It was originally phrased by when the board has a complaint about an employee, like the superintendent would represent that employee, which I didn't think was right. I'm comfortable with, with eliminating that bullet, because I think we have complaint processes and we have different ways of different board policies now that maybe were not in place in 1984. And I don't really know what was the genesis of that. I think it says serve as liaison between the employees of the district and the governing board. No, not that one. Goodness. There it is, P. Represent all district employees involving community concerns which cannot be resolved at appropriate levels prior to the superintendent's office. So to me, that is a new responsibility I didn't know I had, because I don't see myself as representing school employees. I see myself as following board policy. And the way that it was previously written was, instead of community, it said involving the school board, which I thought was strange. Like, how could I represent an employee against the school board's complaint against that employee when the school board is my boss? So anyway, that's the only one that I would eliminate, just because it seems redundant. And if the role of the superintendent is to implement board policy, and as we learned over this year, we have sufficient board policy to guide complaints and complaint investigations. I don't think this one is necessary, nor do I see it substantiated by board policy.
I'm okay striking that one. I feel like even when described is a little bit confusing, and I personally feel like for a job description that might be a little hard to execute in general. So yeah. Other than that, any other comments, questions?
So I agree. You can with striking it. I did, and so the only thing I will say is, because we are working towards equity here at this district, I would have liked to see something within the job description that spoke to the equity that we're looking for and the way we're wanting to move forward. And the reason why I say that, and I'm speaking to my fellow board members, is if we're moving forward with creating and adopting an equity policy, every single thing we do, touch, talk about needs to have that as, I feel like, the forefront of it. And so that's the only thing that I would say. I don't disagree with the job description. I would like to see something about equity included in the job description.
I think where that might fit in, because it does say that the superintendent implements and follows the board policies and will have an equity policy. But if we want to highlight it, I think it would go under the desired qualifications. A statement around a strong equity mindset, and maybe just even that, a strong equity mindset.
That would be perfect.
We can add that maybe as the number one. Strong equity mindset. And then I realized that that second set of job specifications that start at P, it should go back either to A or start at 1. That was a word error, Microsoft Word error. We'll fix that. It's not double. Okay.
Any other comments, additions, updates, deletions? If not, I will, there's an action item, so I will add to request an action on this item.
I move that we approve the updated district superintendent job specifications with the requested adjustments to be used in the recruitment of candidates for the position of district superintendent.
Second.
There's a first and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That was unanimous. Next item is item 14, persons wishing to address the board. This portion of the agenda is available for individuals to comment on or address the board on any issue that is under the board's jurisdiction and not on the agenda. Maximum time allowed for any speaker is usually 2 minutes. Ms. Covary, are there any speakers this evening? Okay, there are none. Next is item 15, governance team member comments, reports, and board meeting reflections. I will first start off on my left. Mr. Ali, any comments?
Let me see. Well, in the beginning, I didn't acknowledge or commend anyone or anything, so I just want to acknowledge the staff members and faculty that retired and thank them for their service and commend them. And I think we did a good job of keeping our focus on the best interests of our students tonight.
I just wanted to thank everyone for bearing with us while we got through our discussions. We do not take our work lightly. We want to make sure that we're making the best decisions, even if that means, talking for longer periods of time. It just really means that we're really passionate and dedicated to the work that we do. And so we thank you for bearing with us on this school night, and we'll get you out of here shortly.
Ditto and ditto. I also just wanted to add, I spoke to Superintendent Vidalis briefly this morning, and just to be transparent and just to share with the public is sometimes we receive comments, and from the public and parents and community members. So I just want to remind folks that while we receive those, there is a protocol, there is a process in place. We don't make decisions or engage in that conversation, not because we don't care, but when we receive that feedback from the community, we facilitate that information we make sure that we hand it over to our superintendent. And I just want to continue to share that, because sometimes people don't understand that is the process in place, is that when we hear from the community, it's our duty to ensure that the superintendent is aware of what we've received, and then he facilitates the process of follow-up and engaging in that interaction and conversation. It's certainly not that we don't care, but I just want to remind the public that that is the protocol that we follow, because I have received some information and comments, and I appreciate and encourage that to continue. But just know that it goes to the superintendent, and he gives it back to us after he's processed the information that he's received. So thank you. And I too want to commend all those who have served our district. But also, as I see resignations, we also hate to lose anyone that leaves our district, especially who's been committed to this work. And I wish you all well. I brought back a little bit of the beach that I got this weekend in Hawaii. And it was just wonderful to not do anything. So I want to encourage folks to stay unplugged every opportunity that you have, because it surely is a huge difference. But I wish you all well. Be safe.
Superintendent Vidalis?
Yeah, so yeah, I agree with Trustee Jordan. I think it's actually beautiful to see deliberation and respectful deliberation that you all engaged in this evening. Felt like there's respect and trust exhibited, and people were heard and listened to, even as the decisions went back and forth, where you were leaning. So I appreciate your willingness to engage in that. And most of your decisions, you're not rubber stamping, but there is a strong recommendation from administration. This is not one that had a strong recommendation. It just was solely your decision. So I appreciate you taking the time to deliberate and hear from each other on making this decision.
Following everybody else said, just wanted to thank everyone for the conversations. I know one of our items here is we'll listen actively and communicate openly and respectfully. We pretty much did that tonight, so I just want to thank the board for that. And other than that, I'm going to adjourn tonight's meeting at 9:13 p.m. Thanks so much for coming tonight.